October 8, 1943, 15:22 hours, 21,000 feet above the Netherlands. A formation of Republic P-47 Thunderbolts from the 334th Fighter Squadron held station behind a bomber stream when Messerschmitt 109s dove through the scattered clouds. The radio crackled with contact reports. Formation discipline collapsed into individual dogfights. When the engagement ended and aircraft reformed, the group commander counted his returning fighters at RAF Debden. One pilot was missing. Ralph Hofer, 22 years old, first combat mission. Everyone assumed he was dead. Then, a lone Thunderbolt appeared on the horizon. The protective tape over its .50 caliber machine guns was torn away. The guns had been fired. When Hofer climbed out of the cockpit, he announced with the casual confidence of someone describing a routine training flight that he'd shot down a Messerschmitt 109. Most pilots took 10 missions just to fire their guns in anger. Hofer claimed a kill on his first sortie. The gun camera footage proved him right. What it didn't show was what that kill would cost him 9 months later, or how many rules he'd shatter before the sky finally killed him back. Salem, Missouri, Dent County. Population barely scratching 4,000. Ralph Kirkland Hofer was born there June 22, 1921, into a world of livestock auctions, harvest seasons, and mechanical problems solved with improvisation rather than manuals. The farm taught him self-reliance, fix what breaks, work until the work is done, ask forgiveness rather than permission. These weren't philosophies, they were survival requirements in Depression-era rural Missouri where failure meant hunger and equipment downtime meant crop loss. He never planned to become a fighter pilot. In July 1941, 5 months before Pearl Harbor, Hofer enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Force. Some accounts suggest it was almost accidental. A farm kid looking for opportunity who found himself in a recruiter's office making decisions that would define his entire adult life, which would last exactly 3 more years. He trained in Canada for 2 years, flight school, gunnery, formation flying, navigation across featureless terrain where a compass error meant dying lost over Hudson Bay. The training was thorough, methodical, designed to produce competent pilots who followed doctrine and survived through discipline. Ralph Hofer learned the doctrine. Then he spent the rest of his life ignoring it. In June 1943, he transferred to the United States Army Air Forces and was assigned to the 334th Fighter Squadron, 4th Fighter Group, based at RAF Debden in Essex, England. The 4th Fighter Group had history and reputation. Formed from the Eagle Squadrons, American volunteers who'd fought with the RAF before Pearl Harbor, the unit carried itself with pride bordering on arrogance. They flew Republic P-47 Thunderbolts initially, 7-ton fighters with 18-cylinder radial engines generating 2,000 horsepower. The aircraft could absorb punishment that would disintegrate lighter fighters, but it handled like a freight train in a knife fight. Hofer arrived as a sergeant pilot, young, untested, the kind of replacement the veterans watched carefully to see if he'd survive his first 5 missions. He did more than survive. October 8, 1943. The mission was bomber escort over occupied Netherlands. Standard assignment, hold formation, protect the heavies, engage enemy fighters only if they threatened the bombers. The doctrine was clear. Formation integrity saves lives. Lone wolves die alone. The Messerschmitt 109s came out of the clouds diving fast. The German pilots knew the mathematics. Hit the escorts first, scatter them, then savage the bombers at leisure. The P-47 formation broke as pilots maneuvered defensively. Hofer saw a 109 diving away after making his pass. Every instinct of self-preservation said rejoin the formation, restore mutual support, survive to fight again tomorrow. That's what training demanded. That's what kept pilots alive. Hofer dove after the 109, alone. He closed fast, the Thunderbolt's weight converting altitude to velocity. At 100 yards, point-blank range where missing was harder than hitting, he opened fire. The .50 caliber rounds walked across the 109's fuselage. Strikes and flashes. The German fighter rolled inverted and dove away, trailing smoke. Hofer's official report was clinical. I followed the Me-109, closing fast, to about 100 yards, opened fire, and saw strikes and flashes on the Hun. I had to shove the stick forward to keep from ramming him as he turned over and went down into a steep dive. Oil on my windscreen prevented me from seeing any more. He returned to Debden alone, having lost the formation somewhere over the North Sea. When he landed, the other pilots gathered around. The torn gun tape told the story before Hofer said a word. He'd fired his guns on his first mission, against standing orders not to break formation. The gun camera footage confirmed the kill. Commander Don Blacksley, a combat veteran with kills in Spitfires and P-47s, a man whose tactical brilliance was matched only by his intolerance for indiscipline, looked at the 22-year-old sergeant pilot who just validated every reckless instinct. It was the beginning of a complicated relationship. Ralph Hofer became known by two nicknames, Kid or Kid, a reference to his youth and his Missouri origins. He flew his P-47 with the Missouri Kid or Show Me painted on the nose, a declaration of regional pride that doubled as tactical philosophy. Show me the enemy, show me the target, show me why I should follow rules that get in the way of killing Germans. He developed a reputation that made him simultaneously the most effective and most frustrating pilot in the squadron. His tactics defied every principle of fighter doctrine. He broke formation to pursue targets. He ignored radio discipline, filling frequencies with commentary when other pilots maintained tactical silence. During one mission over the Alps, he keyed his microphone and announced, "Gee, ain't the Alps pretty?" His commanders wanted to strangle him. His fellow pilots didn't know whether to admire him or avoid flying near him. He wore a blue football jersey under his flight suit. He had a dog named Duke. When senior pilots tried to discuss aerial tactics and deflection shooting mathematics, Hofer dismissed it. Hell, if I worried myself about all of that theoretical stuff, I'd never shoot anything down. I just go get 'em. I don't aim my guns at them. I aim myself at them. It was instinct over intellect, aggression over calculation, the kind of approach that gets pilots killed in their first month, except Hofer kept surviving and his kill count kept climbing. March 18, 1944, 2 Messerschmitt 109s destroyed. By spring 1944, the fourth group transitioned from P-47 Thunderbolts to P-51 Mustangs. The North American P-51 was everything the Thunderbolt wasn't. Sleek, fast, unforgiving. It had the range to escort bombers deep into Germany and the maneuverability to dogfight on equal terms with the Luftwaffe's best. Hofer was assigned P-51B, serial number 421-06924, call sign QP-L. He named it Salem Representative, a tribute to his hometown and a promise that Missouri had sent someone to settle accounts. Then came the last 10 days of May 1944. If you made it this far, you're the reason channels like ours can keep the past alive. Let me know where you're tuning in from, drop a like, and subscribe so these voices from history continue to be heard. May 19th through May 29th, 1944. A period of aerial combat so concentrated, so successful, that it defied statistical probability. Hofer claimed 14 German aircraft destroyed, a combination of aerial victories and ground kills from striking attacks. 14 kills in 10 days. The aerial victories came during escort missions where Hofer, predictably, broke formation to engage targets other pilots avoided. May 24th, two Focke-Wulf 190s destroyed in aerial combat. The ground kills were more dangerous. Strafing heavily defended German airfields meant flying through walls of anti-aircraft fire at altitudes where a single hit meant no time to bail out. Pilots who specialized in ground attack had survival rates that made bomber crews look safe by comparison. May 18th, two Heinkel H-177s destroyed on the ground. May 29th, 5 H-177s destroyed on the ground, 4 confirmed sole credit plus 2 shared with another pilot. Hofer pressed his attacks at minimum altitude, guns blazing, pulling up through flak bursts that turned other aircraft into debris fields. His gun camera footage showed him so close to targets that debris from exploding aircraft struck his Mustang. On June 2, 1944, the day after his ground attack rampage, the 4th Fighter Group promoted Hofer to flight commander. They gave the most undisciplined pilot in the squadron responsibility for leading other pilots, maintaining formation integrity and tactical coordination. It was either recognition of his effectiveness or resignation to the inevitable. By this point, Hofer had achieved something remarkable. He was the highest-scoring non-commissioned officer ace in the United States Army Air Forces, with 9 confirmed victories before his promotion to second lieutenant on April 22, 1944. He was promoted to first lieutenant on May 23rd. 3 weeks after receiving officer rank and flight commander duties, he participated in one of the war's most ambitious operations, Operation Frantic, June 21, 1944. The concept was audacious. American fighters would escort bombers from bases in England or Italy, strike targets deep in Eastern Europe, then continue to Soviet airfields in Ukraine. After refueling and rearming, they'd strike targets on the return journey. It would demonstrate Allied cooperation and allow attacks on targets previously beyond range. Colonel Don Blakesley would lead the mission. 68 P-51 Mustangs from the 4th and 352nd Fighter Groups. There was one problem. Ralph Hofer refused the mandatory vaccinations required for entry into Soviet territory. Blakesley grounded him. Hofer, facing the prospect of missing the mission, reversed his position and accepted the vaccinations. Blakesley reluctantly allowed him to fly. The mission launched June 21, 1944. The route took them over unfamiliar territory, the Carpathian Mountains, Hungarian airspace, regions where navigation errors meant internment or death. Strict orders: maintain formation, conserve fuel, do not engage enemy aircraft unless absolutely necessary. For hundreds of miles, Hofer held formation. Over Hungary, German fighters appeared. The formation engaged. Predictably, Hofer became separated during the fight. The remaining aircraft continued east, navigating across Ukrainian territory with Soviet fighters shadowing them suspiciously. Blakesley's navigation proved flawless. The formations arrived at Pyryatyn airfield exactly on time, landing before an audience of Soviet dignitaries and Red Air Force officers who'd been told American fighters were incapable of such range. Hofer arrived separately, late, having pursued enemy aircraft while the rest of the formation continued the mission. It was classic Hofer: effective, insubordinate, impossible to discipline because the results justified the methods. The return journey from Ukraine came days later. The mission was considered a success, demonstrating capabilities that unsettled Soviet observers more than impressing them. Hofer had survived again. 1 month and 11 days later, his luck ran out. July 2, 1944. The 352nd and 4th Fighter Groups launched from bases in Foggia, Italy. The mission: fighter sweep over Budapest, Hungary. Escort duties and opportunity to engage Luftwaffe fighters defending the region. Over Budapest, a large formation of Messerschmitt 109s rose to intercept. The sky became chaos, individual dogfights scattering across 50 miles of Hungarian airspace. Smoke trails marked falling aircraft, some German, some American. 4 P-51 Mustangs went down in the engagement. 2 pilots became prisoners of war, 2 were killed. Ralph Hofer's aircraft was among the missing. The formation returned to Italy. 6 Mustangs failed to return. Hofer's wingmen reported losing sight of him during the engagement. No one saw him bail out, no one saw his aircraft crash. He simply disappeared over Eastern Europe. For decades, the circumstances remained uncertain. Missing in action, presumed killed, the kind of notation that ends stories without resolution. Then, in 2003, historian Troy White uncovered German and Yugoslav military records that solved the 59-year mystery. After the aerial battle over Budapest, Hofer, alone, separated from his unit, flew more than 200 miles southwest to Mostar Sud airfield in Yugoslavia, now Bosnia-Herzegovina. Whether he was attempting to strafe the German-held airfield or attempting an emergency landing remains uncertain. What is certain, the airfield's anti-aircraft battery, 4th Battery of Flak Regiment 9, Legion Condor, engaged him at low altitude. The German gunners shot him down. Ralph Kirkland Hofer was killed on impact. He was 23 years old. He'd been in combat for 9 months. In that time, he'd destroyed 30 aircraft, 15 in aerial combat, 14 on the ground, making him the second highest scoring ace in the 4th Fighter Group's storied history. The Germans identified his body from his identification tags and flight records. He was initially buried in Yugoslavia. His remains were later repatriated and interred at Jefferson Barracks National Cemetery in St. Louis, Missouri, Section 79, Sites 254 to 256. In retrospect, Hofer's death could have been predicted. He died exactly as his commanders feared he would, alone, far from his unit, attacking a target he'd found on his own initiative while 200 miles separated him from friendly forces. His tactics were reminiscent of World War I aces like Albert Ball and Charles Nungenser, solo hunters who relied on individual aggression rather than formation tactics. That approach worked in 1917, when aircraft were fragile and combat was visual knife fighting. By 1944, it was anachronistic, dangerous, a throwback to romantic notions that modern warfare had made obsolete. Except it worked. For 9 months, it worked spectacularly. Hofer's decorations reflected his effectiveness. Distinguished Flying Cross with 3 oak leaf clusters, Purple Heart, Air Medal with 3 oak leaf clusters, European African Middle Eastern Campaign Medal with 3 bronze stars, Distinguished Unit Badge, French Croix de Guerre 1940 with palm. His fellow pilots remembered him with complicated respect. He was chaos personified. He made tactical coordination impossible. He ignored radio discipline and broke formation whenever opportunity appeared. But when the gun camera footage was analyzed, when the kill confirmations were tallied, the results were undeniable. Jim Goodson, who flew with Hofer in the 4th Fighter Group, remembered asking him about tactics and deflection shooting theory. Hofer's response captured his entire philosophy. Hell, if I worried myself about all of that theoretical stuff, I'd never shoot anything down. I just go get 'em. I don't aim my guns at them, I aim myself at them. It was instinct over intellect, aggression over calculation, the approach of someone who understood that in combat, hesitation kills more pilots than enemy fire.
Ralph Hofer's name appears on memorial walls and in unit histories. Historians debate whether he succeeded because of his rule-breaking or despite it. The question has no clean answer because the evidence supports both conclusions. His tactics were reckless. They violated doctrine designed to maximize survival rates across entire squadrons. Formation integrity, mutual support, disciplined communication, these principles were written in the blood of dead pilots who'd learned through fatal experience that individual heroics usually end in individual graves. But Hofer survived for 9 months of intensive combat. He accumulated 30 kills. He became one of the top 20 aces in the 8th Air Force. His effectiveness was undeniable, as his methods were indefensible. The truth is probably uncomfortable. Some pilots possess intuition and reflexes that allow them to survive situations that kill more methodical aviators. They operate on the edge of chaos, where textbook tactics fail and improvisation becomes the only option. They're valuable precisely because they can't be trained or replicated. They're also unsustainable. Eventually, the mathematics catch up. Eventually, they fly too far alone, engage too many enemies, press an attack at an airfield with flak batteries waiting. Hofer's aircraft, the P-51B Salem Representative, serial number 24106-924, was recovered from the crash site decades later. The wreckage told the story gun cameras couldn't capture: the violence of impact, the finality of a low-altitude shoot-down where altitude equals time equals survival options. His hometown of Salem, Missouri remembers him as a local hero who fought his war the only way his personality allowed. The 4th Fighter Group remembers him as an impossible talent who produced impossible results. Modern Air Force doctrine doesn't teach the Hofer method. It teaches formation integrity, mutual support, disciplined communication. These principles save lives across populations, even if they constrain individual excellence. But occasionally, in pilot training debriefs, in fighter squadron ready rooms, in conversations about the thin line between courage and recklessness, someone mentions the farm kid from Missouri who broke every rule and survived until he didn't. Combat aviation remembers its aces by kill counts and decorations. Ralph Hofer scored 30 victories in 9 months. His decorations filled the display case. By those metrics, he was extraordinarily successful. But his real legacy is more complicated. He proved that individual aggression could still matter in an era of formation tactics and coordinated operations. He demonstrated that instinct and improvisation retained value, even as warfare became increasingly systematic. He also proved that lone wolves eventually die alone, 200 miles from anyone who could help, shot down by ground fire that formation support might have suppressed. The Missouri farm boy who never planned to fight became one of the war's most effective fighter pilots through sheer audacity. He ignored doctrine, frustrated commanders, and survived through a combination of skill and luck until the luck ran out on a Yugoslav airfield in July 1944. His story asks uncomfortable questions about military discipline, individual initiative, and whether exceptional talent justifies exceptional risk. The answers remain ambiguous because Hofer himself embodied the contradiction: successful until he wasn't, effective until he was dead, a hero who might have saved more lives by following orders. The P-51 Mustang continues flying in air shows and museums. Restored examples tour the country bearing names like Salem Representative, honoring pilots who flew them into harm's way 7 decades ago. When they fly, they carry the memory of young men who climbed into cockpits knowing that statistics were against them, that each mission reduced their survival odds, that somewhere over Europe, their luck would eventually fail. Hofer knew this. He flew anyway. He hunted alone. He broke formation. He pressed attacks when safer pilots broke off. For 9 months, it worked. On July 2, 1944, at Mostar Sud Airfield, the sky finally collected its debt. He was 23 years old. He'd been in combat for 9 months. In that impossibly short time, he'd become a legend, a problem, an ace, and a cautionary tale about the costs of individual excellence in collective warfare. His name endures. The lesson remains unsettled. Sometimes the rules exist for reasons written in blood. Sometimes breaking them wins wars. And sometimes you can't tell the difference until the gun camera footage is analyzed and the missing pilots are counted, and someone has to write the telegram to Salem, Missouri, explaining that the farm boy isn't coming home.